on the Shelf Made podcast. So super excited to have Renee from Amazi Foods here. Me and Renee have known each other for a few years now. She was an early advocate for WeStock. I think she joined when we were just kind of pitching an idea and didn't really have a product yet. And so super appreciative of the relationship we've kind of developed here over the last few years. And Renee, I don't know if you kind of want to introduce yourself and the brand a little bit, and then we can dive into the topic for today.
Absolutely. So I'm Renee. I'm the founder of Amazi Foods, repping today. We are a mindful food company selling made in Uganda snacks. So what we do is we partner directly with small businesses and farmers groups in Uganda to not only ethically source our products, but also make our products in country. And the idea is to kind of close that gap in our supply chains and create more sustainable, equitable supply chains, creating jobs in the countries from which we're sourcing. The best part is we all get to enjoy really tasty snacks, including our jackfruit chews and plantain chips, which are all just made with 3 ingredients, but they bring really bold flavors and unique textures to the really kind of boring dried fruit category. So that's what we do.
Nice. Perfect synopsis. And so obviously today we're going to dive into building your supply chain outside of the US. And so obviously a lot of things to unpack here in a short amount of times, but I think just like, what was the first step? Like what relationships did you kind of have to start? I mean, did you hop on a plane and go there and just figure it out yourself? Or kind of what was that first relationship you had to put together to at least get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so that is more or less what I did. I did get on a plane and just kind of figure it out from there. But as you can imagine, the typical story is, someone starting making something in their kitchen, they iterate, they bring it to their friends, they bring it to the farmer's market, and there's kind of this really nice iterative kind of growth process. Unfortunately, when your supply chain is thousands of miles away, it can't quite work like that. So my initial approach was finding a company that was producing a product similar to what I thought I wanted. So I was lucky to find somebody who was making dried fruit for export. And so I figured these people are already sort of meeting certain quality standards, something that I can work with. And I worked with them to then build relationships with additional farmers groups. We signed sort of like an MOU, NDA type thing where I was able to start to develop the recipes with their teams. Okay. And then over time, it kind of became this sort of co-manufacturer relationship, even though I had to very much like do the legwork of building that relationship. Right. And so that's how we first got started. And then, as that developed, we over time were able to get enough demand and traction to justify then having our own production facility out there. So it was a great solution for the first few years of getting started.
And how is kind of like the process adapted over time? What's the feedback loop kind of look like when you guys have to make tweaks to packaging, things like that? I mean, how is it different not really having your eyeballs on production and things like that, where a lot of food manufacturers are doing that here? How is that? I mean, what are the barriers there and how have you kind of tweaked that over time?
Yeah, I mean, that was our greatest challenge. I founded the company in 2016 and it really took us up until I'd say the end of last year, beginning of this year, to get it to a place where I felt our production was actually efficient and high quality. Quality and consistency issues were the biggest issues that we've had. I think mostly because, especially in our case, and this is part of our mission, like people in Uganda are not necessarily aware of the US consumer. So things of consistency and like wanting the same texture and flavor in every bag and, expecting a certain thinness of the chip and even just getting them to understand what's too spicy, what's not spicy enough. Like that feedback loop was very challenging to manage. And I will say I definitely learned by getting things wrong because, we'd have times where I'd sort of get ahead of myself and be like, okay, we're ready for a large order. And then we'd get a large order and half of it was not up to quality standard. So It did require a lot of me going back there, working with the teams, hands-on, And for us, it really was, it depends what your product is and who the stakeholders in your supply chain are. But for me, it also did require a lot of education on the farmer level around like going as far back as like the ripeness of the fruit and being very clear from the farm level all the way to the end of production with an SOP for each step, which again was a learning process for me too. So managing that, took a long time, and it did, again, ultimately what the turning point for us was being able to open our own production facility, because the equipment in there is exactly what we need it to be, and the trust relationship is such that like we're not just another customer, we are the primary reason that they're all in production.
You own the process.
Exactly. And that's what's allowed us also to make the process more efficient. So instead of, in the past, what we were doing is importing product in bulk, and then we'd hand pack it and sift through everything on this side, which, as you can imagine, took forever. But now we have trusted partners, so we're at the point where we can have a very simple turnkey solution. We basically receive the product ready to go in our retail cases, and that's been a recent shift and a huge change in our costs.
And then all of that kind of trickles into like quality control, and then also like health and safety. Like, how do you make sure that you're maintaining kind of US standards from a QC standpoint, while you're based, in the Mid-Atlantic?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's sort of a joint effort, finding experts in the field that can help with that. Like I've certainly used a couple consultants to just make sure that, we are following common HACCP plan guides. We do things like get phytosanitary certificates on every single order. Our facility, the production facility, is certified by the Ugandan Bureau of Standards, which is a nationally accredited board. So, if we comply with them, we do comply with most global production sites around the world. And then we're also working toward an ISO 22000 certification. But it really was a lot of learning about the paperwork required, especially with importing a product. We've had a couple scares with customs holds, and it's usually just due to some sort of clerical issue in the paperwork. It was never really a safety concern, but just learning to really navigate that. And I would say for me, that's one of the first things that, I'm a very lean team. It's basically just me, and we have some great contractors. But in the early days, the first thing that I kind of paid for outside of myself was a customs broker, customs and logistics broker, all in one, handling our order from start to finish to make sure that the goods are coming in right. Because I personally found that, not coming from that world, the jargon and the steps were just very challenging for me and stressful to follow. So I would recommend that, like, if you are in my position and you're kind of just wading into the waters of import export, it is worthwhile trying to find a partner who can help you take you through that steps and making sure that you have both the safety paperwork and sort of the like clerical work that's necessary to enter properly.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do is get that call like 2 a.m. that your product's like held up in some dock somewhere because the paperwork.
Yeah, and then worrying about the airport holding it for more than 3 days, because if it is, then you're paying lots of money.
So I think my most important question, we'll kind of wrap it up here, is you've obviously put in all this work on the manufacturing, supporting the communities in Uganda. Have you seen that resonate with the consumer here in the US, where they really appreciate all the hard work that you've done on the back end? And is that relaying into really resonating and really being a key part of your brand that you're building?
Yeah, so I think yes and no. I think that we are seeing now more than ever people caring a lot about the story behind a brand. And I recently read something that's like 68% of consumers actively search for purpose-driven brands, which obviously works in our favor. Right. I think that, people, once they learn about our mission, are, almost more excited or more loyal in a way. I think what's always been the challenge, but also the exciting part for me is, explaining how what we do is different than just like the fair trade certification people might see on their bags.
Right.
Not to say that what we do is better or, or one or the other, but I think that really having the opportunity to share that what we're doing is relationship building and creating opportunities for industry in other parts of the world, as opposed to just, ensuring that farmers are getting fair pay. And so that really starts conversations. And I think that that's, a really exciting thing that I keep working on refining and seeing how our audience engages with it.
Right. I mean, it's a big story, right? And then it's like, how do you
Yeah.
make it resonate like in a flash to somebody who's picking
Yeah.
up, your product, right? And it's like, it is a huge story to tell. And so I can't imagine like, how you need to quickly get to that point
Yeah.
to the consumer to make it resonate very quickly.
I think the biggest thing for me is I just try to highlight, the idea of like, not only are we focusing on the resource level, we're trying to bring more of that whole start to finish product in country so that there's a direct connection between them and you. And I think that that's like a pretty clear way of explaining that to people. And then, if someone's actually interested, we have the opportunity to kind of unpack it further. But I do think that that's a really exciting thing for people to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, this is great. I think there's a lot of brands now looking to bring products and trends that are probably not in the US into our market. And I think they may be looking to have the manufacturing and supply chain handled overseas. So I think this is super helpful. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you? And then where can they find your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out direct via our website. It basically goes to me. You can also find us on Instagram. Amazi Foods is our handle, AMAZI. FOODS. We're pretty active on Instagram. And then we also are found nationwide at Sprouts Market. You can find us at a number of retail locations across the country, on Amazon, and of course on our website, amazifoods.com.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Renee. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. So I'll edit that